G'day there friends, Connie here once again from Marky Industries, and we are back reading some more stories from Reddit. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. As usual, hit like and subscribe and all that jazz, and let's get straight to the stories. Alrighty guys, we're on relationships. This one was written by user Atlas Lady, and it's titled, "My boyfriend's optimism and immaturity almost destroyed me financially. I cut him off and now he feels abandoned. Is there any hope he'll grow up, or am I being the immature optimist now?" My boyfriend and I started dating in July of 2014. He is the biggest optimist in the world and lived a pretty cushy life as the only child of divorced parents. We both lived separately and had jobs that covered all our bills and then some. He bought an expensive sports car, gaming computer, and purebred dog. Important later. He was in school, while I'd graduated a year before and started work at my first big kid job. Life was great, and the first 6 months were some of the happiest times of my life. And yeah guys, this is a post from a few years ago. The first week of January 2015, he was wrongfully terminated from his job. A new supervisor was on the warpath to replace everyone on boyfriend's shift with his friends and waited until the new year, after the holiday rush was over, to start cleaning house. Government sided with boyfriend during the unemployment claim, and boyfriend started receiving benefits. He decided to focus on finishing school instead of looking for more work. This is where the cracks started. He was supposed to graduate that May, but he failed a class and couldn't, so he had to go to school in the summer. In June, his savings ran out, and he could either afford his car payment and insurance or rent. His lease was up at the end of July, so I agreed to pay his rent and he could move in with me in July and finish school. He found out weeks before he was supposed to graduate that he needed one particular elective to get out. He had to go to school that fall too. I demanded he get a job to help with expenses, as I wasn't planning on having to support him for so long. A month or two, fine. 6 months? No. He got a job as an insurance agent for an extremely reputable company at the end of July. Turns out this job is commission-based. Being the optimist he is, the manager's talk of being able to make unlimited amounts of money drew him in. I paid for him to take the certification tests he needed for work, and he started trying to build a client base selling structured financial products. He made and makes nothing. He'll have a $700 payday for a small close, then nothing for months. He's out there busting his ass every day, but building a financial client base from scratch without any family privilege or existing networks is ridiculously hard. In September 2015, we downsized from my fancy downtown apartment to a POS house on the edge of the ghetto. I paid the security deposit and double rent at both places for a month, as that's how the lease overlaps worked out, totaling about $3,500. By November, my savings were almost gone, and I had to liquidate shares of my family trust, on which I took a penalty as my grandfather did not want us to access it before age 25, to get us by. By December, I had $300 in savings and nothing left in my family trust. I'd spent about $17,000 since July supporting us, his job. He needed money to take clients out for lunch and coffee, his dog, and my dog. Since September, we've been having recurring fights about money and chores. I expected him to pick up 90% of the housework as his way of paying me back. He never shaped up on either front. He just kept repeating to me the same things that his manager said to him to draw him in. "It'll get better. Everyone struggles at first. If you hang on, you'll make it. Once I make it, we'll be rolling in it." Every time we had a fight. Every time. 2 weeks before Christmas, we had this fight again, and I demanded he do something other than feed me bullcrap inspirational quotes. I left the house in a rage and drove to buy cigarettes. I was thinking of who I should text and ask to crash for the night when I got angry. F no, I'm not crashing on someone's couch while he lives on the house I pay for, sleeps in the bed I pay for, and eats the food I pay for. I returned home and gave him 10 days to pack his crap and get out. He moved into his dad's house, and I spent Christmas morning chilling with my dog and returning his presents online. We started hanging out again in January of this year, 2016, and things seemed to be going well for his business, enough for him to consider getting an apartment. I told him he could move back in, and if we couldn't split expenses evenly at first, he had to get serious about doing chores and sticking to my budget. It was fine at first, But by April, he wasn't doing any chores, and I was back to paying 100% of his and his dog's living expenses. He also was about to not meet quota for that quarter and asked me to sign up for a policy and then reverse it after quarter end so I'd be reimbursed. I lost my crap on him. I work in capital markets. I can't afford to commit financial fraud for him. I told him I've sacrificed enough for him. He can't come for my integrity too. Bonus, the friend who he did rope into doing the reversed policy still hasn't been reimbursed 5 months later. We had another blowout fight, and he majorly stepped up on the chores front, which has sustained to this day. Money was still touch and go. When he didn't get paid, his fancy car ate it up every month. He landed a big case in May and paid his half rent in June for the first time and offered to pay all of July, which he did. By the second week of July, he was completely broke again and told me last minute he couldn't pay August rent. I had to scramble to get the cash needed in one account to send the check. He couldn't afford to pay for his half of groceries like he promised either, so that was a scramble too. I'm so sick of this. I work an incredible job for my age, paid off all my college debt 8 months after graduation, and own my car, yet I'm living paycheck to paycheck supporting him. There's always something, even if it's a legitimate something, that keeps him from paying his half. It's been a frickin' year and there hasn't even been marginal improvement. His job is meant for filthy rich trust fund kids who can afford to be this broke while they build their client base. I admire his optimism, but he's not suffering for listening to it. I am. I have enabled him far too long, and after the most recent fight about money, I realized he is too immature to be trying his hand at this job. He complains when he meets with clients that spend their money on cars and trips and toys instead of buying a policy from him, when he blew his money on a car and a gaming PC when he had a steady paying job. He has no problem having regular circular fights with me, yet won't ask his parents for help because, quote, that would be awkward and I don't want to lose my father's respect. He's hurt that I don't trust his promises when he's barely kept any of them, from his graduation date to his bills to chores. He is too immature to see the larger picture, and because I've been enabling him to a fault, he has never needed to because the consequences don't fall on him, they fall on me. Last night, I told him I'm not renewing the lease and I'm moving out by myself. He followed me around the house, pleading with me and asking me questions. How do you feel about me? What about us? Where will I go? What will it take for you to let me come with you? Questions I have answered every single fight. Questions he needs to answer because it's his frickin' life. I refused to answer them again and went to bed. He stood in the doorway and said that stupid Marilyn Monroe quote about not deserving people at their best if you can't handle them at your worst. I said he was totally allowed to feel that way and walk. He shut himself in the computer room and slept on the couch that night. I can't believe he feels like I'm abandoning him after all I've done. He doesn't understand how hurtful it is when he tries to pay his half of rent and bills by spouting off platitudes about struggle and success. It makes me feel so frickin' disrespected, and I've told him this every fight. And despite having this fight regularly, it's like he's not even listening to me. Why would he? I haven't made myself worthy of respect by being his financial doormat and not sticking to my boundaries. At this point, I feel he is using me as a safety net. He knows I won't let him or his dog starve, so he doesn't make himself care about coming up with the money for food. He is deluded by his optimism, so much so that he breaks every optimistic promise he makes to me. He talks about how he thinks a client will buy an expensive plan, but then they get the cheap one, and now he can't pay rent. He talks about how he met loads of people at a networking event, but only 3 call him back, and he needs money to take them out. He says he's set to get 40% enrollment on a corporate contract, but only gets 11%, so he can't pay for groceries this week. I used to think he was lying to me, but now I see he's lying to himself. He hasn't matured at all, and grounded his expectations in reality, because I've been standing in the way of it. Because of this, I don't trust him to give me a realistic end date to supporting him, because he'll probably be wrong about that too. And now that I'm done being his atlas and holding his world together, he's starting to panic. It bothers me so frickin' much that he didn't take me seriously until I let the hammer drop on him, as it should have been in the beginning. The irony is not lost on me that he's a broke financial advisor. I missed the first 6 months of this relationship when he had a job that paid well enough to cover up his financial immaturity. I could have taught him a few things that might have stuck instead of picking up all the slack and mummying the ever-living hell out of him. I miss going to sit-down dinners and football games and movies with him. I miss the feeling I had a month after I met him, where I knew I would marry him. Now, I'm not sure at all. I'm sad I love him. It's a burdensome tether instead of an inner flame it used to be. And maybe this is my own fatal optimism speaking, but that guy is still there, buried underneath all this bullcrap. He just has to grow the hell out of it and take his own risks to learn his own lessons. I can't even explain how badly I want the guy I met back. I'm tearing up writing this. I agreed to him moving back in this year because, according to him, he only needed a few more months to make it and be stable, and I wanted that for him so badly so we could go back to enjoying life together. My hope is hamstringing me, just like it's doing to him. Can our relationship survive now that I'm seriously taking steps to ensure it doesn't bankrupt me? Or am I being stupid and thinking anything will change? Will he move in with his dad and just get him to be the new enabler? What am I doing wrong that's preventing him from understanding how I feel? Oh man, I mean this is tricky because you don't know the individual and you don't know their entire history, but yeah, it seems like he's making this behavior kind of a trend and he's in denial because he's either too headstrong or too embarrassed to admit that he made a mistake with this job. Let's go to the comments. No, you couldn't have. People have to want to learn for lessons to stick. I understand why you're having trouble walking away, because his strengths and weaknesses are so closely tied, but you'd be making the exact same mistake he is by staying, doubling down on a bad decision because you're convinced you can turn it around with just a little more time and investment. He can't, and you can't either. Stop feeding into the sunk cost fallacy and go. Opie replies, "This is so true. I'm a realist from an abusive home, so he was such a bright light of positivity when I met him. Now it's burning me. You're so right about me making the same mistake. I know what I have to do. It's gonna suck doing it, but I'm worth it, to myself at least." There's no hope. You cannot change anyone but yourself. He's the only one who can change himself. Instead of changing, he's doubling down on a philosophy that has proven to be a failure. Why isn't he getting another job? Even if he can't let himself kill this dream and quit, he can at least work a second job, one that would actually pay minimum wage. Opie replies, "He still has office hours during the day, and it infuriates me that they don't pay him for that. He can't get a second job for that reason, as he's meeting clients before and after common working hours. He can't even be an Uber driver because his fancy car is on the restricted cars list, and hell if he's going to take my car too. I hate his stupid frickin' car so much. It represents how financially immature he is, because he didn't even use his money wisely when he had it, and it continues to butt-F him to this day. Did I mention he hasn't paid taxes or registered it either because he doesn't have the money? Not sure who will be paying that inevitable ticket, but it sure as hell won't be me." While he's certainly to blame for being irresponsible, I think you also share the blame for spending over $17,000 on someone you've been dating for less than 2 years at that point, and then taking him in again and putting yourself in the same situation. You ask if your relationship is repairable, but this isn't just about what he can do to shape up. What are you going to do to avoid making a series of very stupid choices again in the future when he messes up again? You can't control the choices he makes, but you can control the choices you make, and you've made very poor ones. Personally, I would never want to put myself in a relationship with someone who can't support himself, and it sucked my bank account dry like that. I would feel like his mother, not his partner, and that's supremely unattractive. You're better off cutting your losses and learning from this. Opie replies, "Totally agree with all of this. I can't even explain how disappointed I am for doing this to myself." Quote, "I would feel like his mother, not his partner, and that's supremely unattractive." Well, this is what started a big fight about chores. He complained about a lack of sex, and I blew my frickin' lid. I pay for all his crap, cook and clean, grocery shop, run errands, do things for the dogs, and he wants more? Why would I want to bang my child, was my response. I'm not sure I understand how you went from living in a nice apartment to living in a ghetto and spending $17,000 in the course of 6 months, all because this guy moved in with you. You were already paying for your living expenses too, right? So all this guy should have added to what you were paying by yourself is the food he ate. I mean, the guy sucks, dump him and all that, but I feel like we're missing a part of the story. Opie says, "I paid for his rent, utilities, groceries, his dog's food, any fast food or restaurant we went to, his test certifications, the deposit on the new apartment, clothes, a business suit for his job, and any client expenses he had. He paid 1.5 months rent in a year. Otherwise, I didn't see a dime from him. Everything I paid for. That's the whole story. Do you know his parents well? Maybe you should have a candid talk to his dad and outline how deep a hole his son is in. You can't give any more of yourself to keep him afloat, but his own family should. I mean, not pay for him, but be there when he stumbles, because he's going to. Also, perhaps see a lawyer. You were living together. You may have some grounds to try and get that money back. Good luck. Opie says, both his parents hate me. Both are intense Christians who think what's happening is recompense for not getting married before living together. I'm the atheist harpy who stole their little boy from Jesus. They don't know the extent of what's going on, just that we're strapped for cash. But I guarantee if I told either of his parents that I spent 25 to 30k supporting him, they will shrug and tell me to learn from it. Okay, Opie updates 1 month later. Well, a lot has happened since I made my first post. I guess I'll address it sequentially since that's how I'm operating right now, moment to moment. After I made that post, I decided to truly cut him off. I changed the Wi-Fi password, froze the credit card I gave him, applied to close our joint accounts, and threw out any gifts I ever gave him. We were planning on attending a dork convention over Labor Day, in Atlanta for those familiar with the con scene, that I had budgeted paying for both of us over a year ago. I told him he couldn't go unless he paid for his half of the hotel and tickets, $600. Not sure why I did this instead of shooting straight and admitting he was out of his gourd if he thought he could go. Shouldn't have played any games, but I'm kinda glad I did because he told me he'd have $1,000 to me by the end of August. Over text too, in writing. I was floored. Suddenly he can come up with the money for a weekend of partying and a chance to reel me back in? I said I would apply that to August's bills and then he could start paying down the rest of the 25k he owed me for supporting him this past year before he could spend his money on luxuries like out-of-state vacations. This was over text and he never responded and slept on the couch again that night. That was a Friday. Saturday morning he left the house around 9 a.m. with his dog, leaving all of his crap in my house. I piled all of his and his dog's stuff under his desk and got rid of any pictures of him around the house. I blocked him everywhere but Facebook and text. I went to 2 rental house showings, loved one of them and the landlord, put a deposit down that day, went on multiple walks with my dog as well as a long trip to the dog park, and celebrated/vented/drank wine through Twizzlers with my next door neighbor and her boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend never returned that night. Sunday, I spent the day working on cosplays and outfits for the convention, as well as goofing off with my neighbor and dog. It was lovely. I kept waiting for this wave of sadness and regret to hit me, but it never did. He had been out for 24 hours, and his name wasn't on the lease. I texted him that his claim to residency was gone, and he needed to come get his things with 24 hours notice. He said he was coming that night. I said 24 hours notice. He agreed to Monday evening. Monday, he picks up his stuff in his father's truck and gives me back the key. Hours after he left, he added a song to our shared YouTube playlist. Say Something by A Great Big World. I added Gravity by Sarah Bareilles and Too Good by Drake, then removed his access to the playlist the next morning. Yay, middle school communication methods. Wednesday, his best friend texts me like nothing is wrong. Thursday, I text my ex about when I can expect his check in the mail. He doesn't respond. Friday morning, I email him. At this point, as far as I can tell, he's gone no contact with me. I send him one last email a day later, basically stating that, and he asks me to coffee Sunday night. We met up for coffee. He never mentions repayment at all, but in the discussion about our feelings, we both felt the same way about this. Betrayed, abandoned, hurt, and distrustful of the other person. He felt I had lied when I said I was fine supporting him, and basically insinuated that I wouldn't want to be repaid if I believed in us, because otherwise I was actually loaning him money under the guise of love and setting him up to fail. When I realized he felt just as used as me because I cut him off from my money, I knew I was done. My stomach sank like a weight. I let him finish talking, then we parted ways. He asked if he could contact me. I said I needed a break. The next day, I emailed him about the $1,000 he promised me and reminded him he never discussed repayment at our meeting. He didn't respond for days. Then, the day I was set to leave town for the convention, he replies saying the money was on the way. Cool, it can sit in my mailbox for 5 days while I'm out of state. Also, during this time, he was telling mutual friends we were going through a rough patch, yet my friends were finding him on Tinder and OKC. I partied my tail off for the entire convention, and when I came back, the check was in an unpostmarked envelope in my mailbox. I cashed it and sent him an email telling him such and asked that he use snail mail for future repayments instead of trespassing on my property when he knows I won't be home. I seriously wonder if he was looking for the spare key I left with the dog sitter. So creepy. He replied to that email with some mushy, "I love you and I know I messed up" things, claiming he is too nice and can't say no, and his urge to help others makes him neglect himself and he needs to work on that. It was the most laughable apology on earth. I was so nice and helpful that I couldn't stop myself from draining you of all your money and energy. My bad. I replied, "You broke my heart and my bank account. It will be a long time before they're both fixed. And by then, I hope I won't be stupid enough to trust you with them a third time. I'll be responding to emails about repayment. Otherwise, good luck with everything." He replied, "If I could take everything back that I did, I would. I love you with all my heart. I could have prevented it all. I could have taken action, but I let you slip away, and that'll be one of the biggest mistakes of my life. I'm truly, truly sorry for hurting you. I just want you to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted." I moved out of the house we lived in to a similar one a few streets away. Moving helped keep me busy enough to not think about this. I threw out all our mementos and pictures and crap in the process, so everything in the new place is all me. Just me. Now I'm settled in, and it feels like it hasn't hit me that it's over. I thought I'd be crushed, and there were some lonely moments at the convention that caught me up enough to need a cigarette, but I just feel humiliated. I don't even have the urge to check his Instagram. Every time I see a picture of him, it just reminds me of how stupid and naive I am for thinking he was my one. I'm also super distrustful of my feelings now because of that. It wasn't a question in my mind when I met him that we'd be together forever. I knew I wanted to spend my life with him, like my name, like a fact. I see cute people out or have great conversations, but I have no desire for anything more because I feel like my feelings aren't trustworthy enough to merit acting on them. They'd led me so far astray last time. But that's it, I guess. It's over, and life is going good. And some final comments. I remember seeing your original post and wondering to myself what would happen. You handled this masterfully, and it's obvious you're much better off mentally and emotionally for dropping him from your life. You just sound happier in your writing, and for that, I'm glad for you. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Opie replies, "Thanks. It creeps me out how quickly he became a stranger, right in front of my eyes. Anyway, the convention was helpful for jump-starting the old singing bee thing again. Haha, that's the path I'll be on for a bit." I'm at a sincere loss at the amount of money she threw away on that man-child. That is insane. She dipped into her trust early and depleted it for him, and he couldn't even be bothered to double-check that he could graduate on time? Twice? This is the post my mum would have written in 1996. My dad was just like that. He tried selling life insurance and financial planning services and cars and a whole series of multi-level marketing crap. He secretly rented an office and bought an expensive computer and put it all on credit in secret. They went bankrupt. My mum was a fool for not divorcing him. After the bankruptcy and threat of divorce, he changed in that he kept working normal wage-based jobs. He hated that work and resented my mum for making him do it, as if it were punishment and not just what an adult with 2 kids and a mortgage has to do. They're still together, and he's been working the same job he hates for almost 20 years now. They both still resent each other, and I don't even really know why they're together. Maybe just fear of loneliness. Anyway, I'm glad Opie got rid of that guy before he could introduce any more chaos into her life. Most people make some relationship mistakes in their lives. It's a pity she got back with this leech once, but it's not hard to imagine that happening. I'm relieved she's free of the tapeworm that was taking away so much from her. I'm using harsh language. I'm sure the guy had qualities that endeared him to her. I mean, his optimism became part of the problem, but it can be uplifting to have someone with a positive attitude around you. But he needs to seriously grow up. Yeah, 100%. Anyway, guys, we're going to leave that story there. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, we're going to move on to another story. Okie dokie, still on relationships. This was written by a throwaway account, and it's titled, "Me, 21 female, with the family I nanny for. The son's behavior is starting to creep me out, but I'm not sure if it's actually inappropriate or just a cultural difference. Hey there, using a throwaway just in case. So I'm from the US and recently moved to Italy to nanny. I feel this is important because so far I've not been able to tell if I'm struggling with a cultural difference here in Italy or if I actually have reason to be weirded out. It is easy to tell that the son, Dario, is in middle school, as he is already several inches taller than me and his mum, and has maybe 30 pounds on me. When I first got here, some of the stuff that freaked me out a little I could handle, and I chalked it up to being an Italy thing. This includes stuff like talking almost exclusively in a baby voice when addressing his parents, calling his parents mummy and daddy, fighting physically with his little sister over who gets to sit on mum and dad's lap multiple times throughout the day, fighting with the sister over who gets to sleep with the parents, getting extremely upset when mum or dad leaves for the day, and whining about not getting enough kisses or time laying in bed kissing with mum, and having his parents blow and chewed food in his mouth because it's too hot. Now, I really don't want to be critical of this if it's normal here, but in the US, I seriously can't imagine a single 7th grade boy engaging in any of these behaviors, so it's really new to me. And really, it hadn't affected me, so I just let it be. The problem is, though, that now I'm starting to get involved, and it's making me really uncomfortable. For example, our rooms have adjacent windows which allows the kids to see into my entire room at all times. To me, this is pretty inappropriate. What am I supposed to do when I need to change clothes? But I also don't want to seem like I'm sexualizing children or accusing them of anything, so I just politely asked for curtains and took to changing in the bathroom. After weeks without curtains, the family finally promised me that someone was coming to put them up. Well, he only put them in the kids' room. Ever since then, I find Dario peeping through the curtains at me multiple times a day. Now, I'm sure he's just checking on me or curious about what I'm up to, but it makes me so uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell the family though because I'm afraid they would think I was accusing their baby of trying to spy on me changing, so I just took matters into my own hands and hung up a blanket over my window. Another issue has been when we stay at the kids' grandparents' house. There is a room for the parents with a bed for one child and a room for me with a bed for one child. I figured we would split up boys and girls and I would stay with the daughter, but nighttime rolls around and Dario is crawling into the bed next to mine. I was so uncomfortable I could hardly sleep. I've talked to my friends at home about this and they all think it's really weird, because we aren't related and he's a teenager now. But this is of course an American opinion, so I can't tell for sure if we're imposing our ideas onto this family. Again, if this is really a cultural thing though, I don't know how to tell the family that where I'm from, it's kind of inappropriate for a boy so old to be sleeping next to me, especially when he's been spying on me lately, without causing issues. Of course, these behaviors affect other aspects of our life as well, as it's hard to get Dario to do anything because he usually claims it's too hard to do. Making a bed at 13? Too hard? Are you kidding? And I often find myself wanting to tell him to grow up. What I need help with is knowing whether he does need to grow up or if all of this behavior is normal here and I'm the crazy American that needs to adjust. Is this behavior normal for a 12-year-old or is it immature? I feel like the parents still really see him as a young child, and usually he acts like it, but for the most part it seems like he plays up the baby act because he knows it makes his parents cater to him more. If this all is abnormal, does anyone have any suggestions about how to bring this up to the family? Yeah, to me it sounds like his behavior is pretty weird regardless of what country you're in. He does sound though very spoilt and possibly on the spectrum as well. Let's go to the comments. It's normal behavior for a spoiled 13-year-old. Of course, most adolescents would want to peek at you through the curtains. The problem is the parents. They have to stop that crap right now. Don't you have authority as a nanny to scold him? I'm Spanish. We have a very similar culture to Italy, and that crap is inappropriate. The parents are educating a horrible child that will grow up to be an a-hole that thinks the world should cater to him. Opie replies, "Oh my goodness, the relief I'm feeling right now to know that this isn't normal. So far, I have not particularly felt like I have much authority because the times I would scold him, the parents are sitting right there, and how can I reprimand him in front of his own parents? I didn't include this in the post, but he's already showing major signs of being an a-hole. He's always so rude, critical, and ungrateful. Every meal I make, he has something to insult about it. He treats his little sister like crap, even though she is a doll, and often acts more mature than him. and he loves ordering me around and telling me what I'm doing wrong. It drives me up the wall. We've established that this kid's behavior is weird, but WTF are the parents responding to your request for privacy and curtains by giving them to the child? Opie says, I have no clue. They've been really weird about some stuff. Like, this is TMI, but the mum knew I was on my period because I had to ask her where to buy tampons here, and we get to the house and there's no trash can in the bathroom or in my room. I asked for one multiple times and she said she'd get one and never did. And when I asked last, she said, well, the kids have a trash can in their room if you need it. Like, what the F? Are you not an adult woman? Do you not understand how this works? Do the parents discipline the kids? I asked about discipline when I interviewed, and they said they don't really have to discipline the kids. I should have taken it as a warning sign. Honestly, the mum is very strict about some stuff, so they're very good in certain areas that she deems important, etiquette, cleanliness, but when Dario picks on the daughter, they just let the kids yell and scream and cry until I step in. They also seem to encourage many of Dario's rude comments because technically he does word them politely. For example, I will bust my ass making a meal for the whole family to be kind and helpful. It's not in my job description, and Dario will eat 4 plates of it and then say, I'm sorry, but why would you cook this like that? All I'll say is, that's how we cook it in the US. And he'll say, well, I didn't like it. The Italian way is much better. And then put his plate on mine for me to take it to the kitchen and leave. No, thanks for cooking. No, but I did like this part. Just insult, clean my plate, bye. He loves to criticize. Is the child autistic? I thought about the autism initially, but I'm fairly certain it isn't that because when his parents are gone, the baby act completely turns off and he acts like any other teenager, albeit manipulative and critical, I've ever known. And I've worked in childcare, in the classroom, and as a coach for years now. Interesting. But yeah, this kid sounds like an absolute nuisance. And by all accounts, sounds like the parents are to blame. Let's go to an update, 4 months later. Hi all, I'm back. Yeesh, how long has it been? 3 or 4 months later with an update. Long story short, I quit. Here's the long version for those interested. The curtain issue. Like I said in my last post, I just hung a blanket for privacy, and since then there've been no peeping issues. I asked 2 more times for curtains and was reassured both times that the curtain men would come to hang them in my room. He did come back once and hung more curtains in the kids' room, but again, not in mine. Then I was told that they didn't like him and would be finding another curtain guy to hang my curtains. It's been 4 months, no more mention of it. I still use the blanket. The vacation issue. I've simply refused to go on vacation with them. I'm off on weekends and I've reached a point where I just refuse to be home for the entire weekend and manage not to see them from Friday night until Monday morning if I can help it. I go on weekend trips, crash on couches, sneak into my room when they're eating, things like that just to avoid seeing anyone on my days off. The Dario issue. Dario still acts extremely immaturely. I've warmed up to him a lot and I've figured out how to cut his rudeness and such. He's become a lot more positive and kind, especially because his mum has been gone a lot and he's with me every day. I'm very upbeat and have worked really hard to get him to socialize and speak kindly. Unfortunately, he seems to have almost regressed in terms of the childish behavior. He still sits on laps, kisses a lot, and sleeps with the parent when the other is gone. The baby talk is constant. For example, he loves to repeat back-butchered syllables of words, if that makes sense. Like his dad will say, oh my god, enjoy my butchering of this Italian, here we go. Passami un cucchiaio, or pass me a spoon. And he will clap and exclaim, oi, or vuoi dell'acqua? Do you want water? And he'll go, qua, qua. He also has started eating kind of like a baby too. Like he'll take the remaining tomato sauce that we used on pasta and use the giant spoon to drink it out of the pot and get it all over his face, and then suck on each of his fingers. But when I look at his parents, they're looking at him like when you see a cute baby trying to use a fork and getting food on his face. But he's 13, so it's honestly sickening to watch and listen to. He won't lock the door when he goes to the bathroom or showers. Why? I started locking the door when I was like 7, and he even cried the other day when his sister sat on the foot of his bed. He doesn't like things touching his bed. And guess what? The parents got mad at the daughter, said it was her fault for baiting him. She just had to tie her shoe for a second, and declared that it's her fault Dario will be upset all night. He also hasn't made any progress with friends and is taken to playing League of Legends, so he won't leave his room or do any activities or lessons with me or the sister. It's pretty sad, honestly. Basically, the hardest part of this whole thing has been the mother. I won't even go into it here, but she's honestly clinically insane, and I feel so bad for all the people in this house that have to put up with her. She's just a power-hungry, jealous, bitter woman who needs to see a professional. Basically, I went home for Christmas to be with my friends and family and realized how bad this experience was for my health. I was going out drinking almost every night to escape the house. I was sleeping horribly because I knew she was there, and her presence gave me awful anxiety. I was getting yelled at every day, even when I did nothing wrong. I was at home in the States, and the thought of going back made me absolutely miserable. So when I came back, I told them I needed to go back early for medical reasons. Not totally untrue. And now I'm set to leave the last week of March. They've found a new girl. Look out for her post here sometime in the future. TLDR, Dario is still acting like a baby, the mum is still crazy, and I freaking quit, homies. Get me out of here. And some final comments. I'm Italian, and I say that nothing about this kid was normal or appropriate to our culture. The men in my family have such little expectations set to them. There are some things that seemed a bit normal to me. Blaming the girls when the boys are upset, like sitting on the bed, keeping boys close to the mother's heart, nothing they can do is wrong, letting the boys be. When you read this, they really just let Dario be. The sister had quite a few expectations on her to monitor and manage Dario's feelings. Having so few expectations on the boys that it almost delays their development, though the baby talk and such is weird, but seems like a reasonable place some children might end up given how few expectations there are for them. Just giving a plate to be cleaned. Opie didn't mention what was expected of the sister, but I would guess that the sister does quite a lot of chores before and after dinner time. This really just reads of the out-of-control misogyny that is all over Italy. It can be shown in this way, veneration of their sons, but Italians won't accept this reality. It's something that's really hard to see until you leave it. I'm Italian and can say this crap is weird AF, lol. For those in the comments talking about Italians moving away from their home at 30, sadly, price to move out is seriously daunting, and at the same time we split the bill to let our parents focus on the last payments for their pensions. Man, the person I feel the worst for in this story is Dario and his sister. They're going to grow up into effed up adults in different ways. Dario is going to become your quintessential golden child who thinks the world gives a F about his tantrums like his parents do and will always give in to his a-hole behavior. And his poor sister, she's going to be completely forgotten. On the bright side though, hopefully she'll cut her parents off, be an awesome human being, and create an awesome life away from them. Yeah, how long's it going to take before the daughter goes no contact? I mean, in an American family it would seem obvious, but in an Italian one, I don't know, they tend to keep their family a lot closer for a lot longer, regardless of their flaws. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts down below. Anyway, that's the end of that story, and we're going to move on to another one. Okay, going over to Petty Revenge, this one was written by user Monkey Juggler, and it's titled, Drinking on My Doorstep, Get Fired. Many years ago, I worked at an office in the city centre just a couple of blocks from my rented apartment, so I often ate lunch at home. It was so nice being able to relax at home in the middle of the workday, until summer came around. You see, there was a bar right next to the very narrow door from the building's stairwell out to the street, so occasionally I'd come home to find someone sitting on the doorstep, beer in hand, especially on weekends, but I'd just politely say, "Sorry bud, I need to get in here," and they'd inevitably stand up and let me pass, usually saying, "Oh, sorry bud, back." Not a big problem in my life, in other words. But then, one day, I came home for lunch and there was a construction worker, around 50 years old, with a high-vis vest and safety hat, sitting on the doorstep with a half-drunk beer in his hand. As always, I said my usual, "sorry bud," phrase, but instead of standing up, this motherfricker looked up at me with contempt, looked down again and didn't move. So I had to lean over him, unlock the door, and kind of half squeeze past or half step over him. When it was time to get back to work, the douche nozzle was still sat up on the doorstep with a fresh beer in his hand and still refused to budge when I asked to pass. Same thing next day, except this time he mumbled "prick" when I asked to get past. I was now frickin' fuming. Day after day it was the same thing. This piece of crap ruined my otherwise perfect lunch routine to the point that I didn't want to go home for lunch anymore. Sometimes the crap bag was sat there when I came home at the end of my workday. But then I got an idea. I took a longer lunch than usual, ate a sandwich on a bench diagonally across from my apartment, and watched him arrive at the bar, drink 3 beers on my doorstep, and when he got up to leave, I followed him to his workplace just down the street. And this is where I got really lucky. He was working on a building that I knew pretty well, because I'm a structural engineer, and my colleagues were the engineers for that building project. Of course, I didn't know this douchebag's name, but that didn't matter because the frickin' idiot had a goatee beard and a mullet and ponytail haircut, which was pretty distinctive to say the least. So I went to my colleague's floor and asked them what they thought about the site manager for that project. They replied, "Yeah, he's a good guy, professional, meetings are always friendly." My eyes lit up. "Well, next time you're on site, can you tell him that it's come to your attention that one of his guys is drinking at least 2 beers every lunchtime at the bar and returning to work drunk, around 50 years old, brown hair, goatee and mullet?" My colleague told me 3 days later that the site manager was fuming when he heard what they had to say. He knew immediately who the guy was and had zero tolerance for guys being under the influence on site, as they're a danger to others. So he had followed him at lunchtime, saw him sitting at his usual spot on my doorstep with a beer, and as soon as the guy arrived back on site after lunch, he was fired on the spot. He made sure to do it in front of his other guys, so A, they would know not to be so stupid, and B, word would get out that this guy was an irresponsible drunk. Good luck with finding work in this town, F-wad. Yeah, good riddance. What an idiot. Being rude while being stupid. Can't say he didn't deserve it, that's for sure. Anyway, folks, that's it from me today. I hope you guys enjoyed those stories. Thanks for making it to the end, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good day. Cheers.